Well, welcome to tonight's college planning seminar. It's called Deferred, Now What? I am your host, Brennan Barnard, and joining us tonight is Gina Meneni, who is the Director of College Counseling at the Bay School of San Francisco. Welcome, Gina.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. So those of you who actually, we would love for people to go in the chat and just tell us where you're coming from, whether you're a student, a parent, counselor, what grade you're in, and just let us know in the chat. You can put it in there to everyone so we can see who's in the room. And we'll also be using the Q&A during this half an hour. So if you have questions for Gina or for me, just put them in the Q&A and we'll get to them as we go. And we're really going to focus on deferrals tonight. So tomorrow night, we're having a kind of ask us anything with admission officers. So you can tune in there to ask your general questions, but we're really kind of dialing in on deferrals. And if you have been deferred, or if you have a child who's been deferred, it is likely very disappointing. And maybe even frustrating. It doesn't give you, much certainty of an acceptance, but it's also not a denial. And so there are things you can do to improve your chances during the regular admission cycle, and we'll talk about that a lot tonight. So, Gina, can you just start by kind of giving us a kind of overview of, if you've received a deferral, what's that mean?
Sure. It could mean a number of things, and you might not ever really know. But from the lens or perspective of a college, what it might mean is we had an increase in applications and we were unable to admit as many in this first round, but you're a compelling student and we want to continue to work with you. It could mean your application was the first point of contact we had with you, and we're not certain that if we admitted you, you would come. So it's an opportunity, I think, to go back and look at your application and make sure you left it all out on the table, all on the line, whatever phrase you want to use, and know that you have this opportunity to be reconsidered, right? So it's not over. The disappointment stings. I think maybe even worse than a deny it sometimes, because then you can just move on and be mad at them and move on. But a deferral kind of feels like, so it might be good enough, right? But know too that you're judging the school now. So if you applied under an early decision contract and you were deferred, you're now the consumer, right? You're not reacting to a decision. So it gives you an opportunity to really reevaluate if this is the right institution for you for the next 4 years, or if it was just getting the acceptance that was motivating you.
Right, it really frees you up in a lot of ways. You can reframe it like that. And it is at its very core an enrollment management tool, right? I mean, it is what colleges use to kind of control the size of their class and make sure they don't over enroll and make sure they have space left over for people in regular decision. Because they don't know what's coming down the pipe. And I think there's a lot of there's some schools who defer a significant amount of their applicants, right? And some, like you mentioned, some schools that have early action who defer people, they might defer them because they don't know how interested you are, right? You maybe are above their admitted student profile. And so they think, well, this student's never going to choose us. And so why should we accept them early, right? So if you're just joining us, please put some questions in the Q&A and we'll get to those as we go along here. So Gina, what should you do, not you, but what should a student do after they've gotten a deferral?
Yeah, give yourself time to process. You don't have to do anything today. You don't have to do anything this week. Right? We're going into the holidays, which gives you time to get away from the chatter within the school hallways, gives you time by yourself to reflect and be mindful about how you want to move forward with this. It doesn't mean you have to be considered in the regular pool. If you're done, you can politely excuse yourself from the table. But if you do want to continue with the process, be intentional about why. And I would say in January, reach out to the college, reach out to those admission officers who visited your high school, and talk about, what can I do to be more competitive? update your application in an email, letting them know, what successes you had in the fall of senior year. And that's huge. Remember, we had COVID. And so a lot of times with students in distance learning, the challenges, I don't have to tell high school students and parents what those challenges were, but it might just be that a college wants to see how you're doing in in-person learning as we return to that structure. So it might be a simple grade update. It might be you got a job, or you went out for a new sports team, or you tried something new like theater, right? Any update is an important update. And you want to get those out in January as your fall grades get posted. And just really asking the question, what is it that I can do to be competitive? And no one's probably going to tell you, oh, your essay was flat or this or that, right? But it does show your interest. And I think that's key in moving the needle on these deferrals. And when we get away from the most selective schools, that people tend to talk about, most students are admitted when they're deferred at the majority of schools.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the anything in college admission, right? It depends, right?
Mhm.
You know, and I think the they're getting away from, students are getting away maybe from the chatter in the hallways at school, but maybe not the chatter at family gatherings and holiday gatherings and things like that. And so I think, as you talk about processing, I think it's really important for students and parents to kind of set some ground rules, right? To
Absolutely.
just protect yourself and protect your child, and make clear what your wishes are. Like, I don't want to talk about college, or yeah, I do, want to process this with somebody.
Yeah, set those boundaries. I told my students over break, if someone asks you, everyone has an opinion about college, right? Everyone wants to say what you should or shouldn't do. And, come up with a canned response and stick with it. Whether it's like, what, it's been a really stressful process for me. I don't want to talk about it right now. Thank you. But tell me about your college experience, and shift the conversation, and make sure, right, that your immediate family supports that.
Yeah, that's great advice. Um, and so I think another thing is in terms of what to do when you're deferred is first and foremost, follow directions.
Yeah.
Right? Right? Read the directions. After you get by the initial disappointment, right, or the initial frustration, if you have not yet ripped up the letter, or put your knee through the computer screen, then go back and read the letter they sent you about the deferral really carefully. Because like you were saying, that sending updates and things like that, some schools want those, some schools ask you not to send those. And so
Mhm.
don't just follow directions. I mean, it's pretty elementary, right? But doesn't always come through to people. So if they ask for an extra letter of recommendation, you can maybe ask somebody who knows you well to write another recommendation. Fewer and fewer schools are doing that. If they ask you not to send a recommendation, don't send a recommendation. But a lot of them on their portals, right? Like, they have places to give updates. And there's a question here in the Q&A. Is it appropriate to ask a college why you were deferred and what your chances are in regular decision?
I guess I understand why you might want to know that, right? But I just want to underline again, it's never one thing, right? There could be institutional priorities you're not even aware of. We need more male students from Wyoming, right? We need, it could be something that has nothing to do with you, yet it feels like such a harsh judgment. So I get it. Is it appropriate to ask? One, I don't think you're going to get a straight answer. And two, I would encourage students to be proud of how they submitted, and proud of who they are, regardless of an outcome. And I don't know that information feeds a healthy mindset as you progress through the process.
Nor are you likely to get it, right? I mean, no,
Right.
like you said, nobody's going to say, "Oh yeah, your essay, that was the pits," right? And students also often wonder, like, should I go back and redo my supplement, or should I send another essay? You don't need to, right? Like you said, have confidence in what you've done, um, and you can ask your local admission officer if you wanted to connect with them and say, if you've had a relationship established, and send them an email, just kind of reiterating your interest, right, in the school, and say, is there anything I can do to increase my chances of being admitted? Right?
Yeah.
Is there anything that you'd like to see from me or any other information you need to help me out? In terms of asking what your chances are, and this, this question came in through the registration too. Are there any ways to guess how likely next you might be to be accepted? There are ways to guess, but that is just what yes. Because to be honest, you wouldn't be deferred if the admission office knew, right? Like they're trying to guess as well. So they don't know what their regular decision pool is going to look like. They don't know how competitive it's going to be. If you've been deferred, they're saying you're still competitive, right? But if the regular decision pool is just super, super competitive and selective more than regular decision or early decision, then it could be unlikely. So there aren't really ways to tell, and it doesn't really make sense to ask, I would say.
Yeah. I think that's energy that could be better spent getting, I mean, this is also an opportunity to get more familiar with the schools you've applied to or plan to apply to, right? And do some research and make sure, you have this 2-week window before a deadline's passed. The latest deadline out there is like usually February 1. So using this time to really make sure that nothing's missing from your list, it's balanced, you're going to be satisfied with any of the options, right? You shouldn't apply anywhere you don't want to go. So this is also that opportunity to really go back and defend where you're applying and refine them.
Yeah, not only defend it, right, but get excited about it,
Oh,
right?
for sure. Yeah.
And like you said earlier, connect with why you were so excited about it. A lot of times the question is, okay, I applied early decision to this school, I was deferred. Now, do I wait and see what happened, or do I apply early decision to another school that I'm really excited about? Any thoughts on kind of that, like making that decision and processing that?
I think that's such a personal decision. I think that there is no Cinderella moment in this. I don't think that there is one size fits all or like one school that's going to just fit you perfectly. I really do think it's the attitude and the students' engagement with the university once they get there. So I think you can turn any school into a meaningful experience if you go in with the right mindset. But if you are compelled to do ED2, sure, that's available. I would just really gut check yourself and make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Again, it's kind of separating the desire to want to have a home and have this process be over with what do I need for the next 4 years and where will that, and what environment's going to serve that growth and where I want to be.
I love that. I love the Cinderella moment, right? And if you're
Yeah.
not, it's gonna turn into a pumpkin. So
And I think probably, Brendan, we've been doing this long enough where you see every year students who are deferred or even denied and end up at wonderful institutions that they're in hindsight are so excited about and do feel like it all works out.
So there's a question in the Q&A. If you don't have anything new to report, what can you say to help your application?
That you're still interested, thank
And
you.
why?
Like,
Why?
although disappointed I wasn't admitted, I appreciate the consideration in regular. I'm still excited about the institution. This is why. This is how I see myself being a valuable member.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's another opportunity to kind of articulate the match, right? Why you think you're a match for their school. I would say do not do that repetitively, right? So reach out to the admission officer, maybe this week if you've been deferred last week, or maybe right after the holidays, depending when you're deferred. But then let it be, right? Like they've got a lot going on, and what you don't want to do is get on their bad side and have them be annoyed by you constantly asking them
Well,
things.
yeah, that's true. Like every time you're sending an email, you are creating work on the other end. And you don't want to be known as the email girl or the email moving forward through the process. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about, I mean, you already said, updating grades, right? Some schools are trimester systems, and so, or trimester schedules will have grades in the next week or two. And others will not, excuse me, woo, will not have grades until the beginning of the year. So sending those when they're ready. But what are some other components? Can you just kind of hone in on those again?
Of
Oh,
updates to share.
yeah, or just an effective deferral letter. I mean, I get
Yeah, I tend to advise my students to keep it, 2 paragraphs. Um, One being it is called a letter of continued interest. So start there. Why do you continue to be interested? Um, reaffirming that if admitted, you hope to come, and why the match. And then the second paragraph, in whatever order, doesn't matter, but then with the updates, right? Like what's new? Certainly things are new. With you personally, whether you've discovered a new interest in an academic subject. I think sometimes students don't realize the growth that they have. I don't know if much of us do, but talk to an advisor at school or talk to a parent, and I'm sure they'll quickly help you find ways in which you have something to celebrate.
And at the end of the program, we'll put in the chat a link to just kind of a one pager about maybe how to approach not only the deferral but the deferral letter. And one of the things is, and like you said, um, if it is, if you applied early decision and it's still by far your first choice college, right? Then saying that in the letter,
Mhm, mhm.
only if you mean it, right? But saying if you
Admitted, I will come. Yeah,
admit me, I will come. They want to know that, right? But again, don't say that to multiple schools, and don't say it if you don't mean it.
right.
And there's a question here: what if you're not in contact with the local admission person? Where and how do you communicate?
Reach out, go to the website. Go to the missions website. If you can't find who the regional or area rep is for your county or state, send to the general and ask to be connected to someone. Um, a lot of and I encourage that because it also helps with this disappointment to do something. And that's something that you can do. And if it's meaningful, um, shows your interest, right? And so, um, yeah, I would just reach out to the institution specifically. And back to your point, like follow directions. Like if they say they say please don't, then no, don't. But
Some prefer you just do it right on their portal,
yeah,
and not send emails.
yeah,
MIT's that way, and some other schools.
yeah.
Uh, what about parents? What can parents do to best support their child through the kind of home stretch of college applications, dealing with that disappointment, maybe from a deferral?
Yeah, I'm reminded of my own son, and as a toddler, right? Like if he fell off his bike, he'd first look to me to see how to react. And I always say that like, oh, there goes my dog. But yes, these teens are not toddlers, but they are still looking to parents and people they trust to calibrate their reaction. And so if you're devastated, they're devastated. And part of that is they feel they've disappointed you in some way. So I would make that really clear that a college's choice doesn't change, how talented your student is or, in whatever area. And it reassuring them that this continues. This is not a no, this continues. And we're talking about picking a college for 4 years, and now you have till May 1. And I don't know who else wouldn't want that time with such a huge life decision. So in many ways, this is a gift.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think also not like you said. I mean, go back to the toddler analogy, right? Not rushing in to fix it,
Yeah.
managing your reaction, but also, not immediately putting a band-aid on the wound, right? Allowing students the time to process it, not going to them and saying, okay, you were deferred. Okay, now we need to do this. You need to decide what's your next choice. Give it some time, and then ask them when the right time is to kind of re-engage.
Absolutely. I mean, I was speaking with a colleague today, actually, who's on the college side, and they shared the worst thing that they get is, this knee jerk reaction email from a parent. And, it's like, let the dust settle, let
Yeah.
it settle. Let your student own this process, right? Your students also need to know that you trust them to manage this, right? There's going to be far greater disappointments moving forward in life, and let them resolve this and build up that resiliency, right?
And that you're proud of them as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's say, do all deferral letters have deferred on them? I received a letter that's asking for first semester grades, but did not actually say deferred and that they are still interested. This is probably, I'll just kind of, and you
Yeah.
can weigh in, but I think they're probably asking before they make a decision if you can send them first semester grades. A lot of schools will hold off on making that decision. So if you haven't received a decision, then make sure you talk to your counselor and send those grades in. And it would, if you are deferred, it will say you're deferred to the regular round. It'll be pretty specific. But if you have any questions, call their office, email them. If you have a counselor you have access to, go and talk with your counselor. Any thoughts?
I would just reach out to the college too for clarification. I know for our school, our semester grades won't be available till January 5th. And so I would just acknowledge whatever communication you've had and just get clarification on when that needs to be in by.
Yeah. There is another question that came in during the registration about is it all right? And you talked a little bit about this earlier, but is it all right to send them updates not just about grades, but other activities, boards, et cetera? And absolutely. And sometimes it's things that the student, right, doesn't even think of, right? Like you said, I mean, it's maybe a project they were involved in they're really proud of, or maybe it's award that came out after the admission decision, or whatever it might be. Maybe it's something they plan to do in the spring. Like some schools have senior projects or a capstone or something like that. This is what I'm planning. I'm really excited about this, or I'm excited at the spring sport or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a student one time, it was a great anecdote, write about learning a skateboard trick that they had been practicing forever and ever. And they were like, well, I've done some other things. You're going to get my grades. But the most important thing I accomplished is I nailed this trick. And the student was admitted and the admit letter had a nice note about it. Colleges expect you to be students. They expect you to be teenagers, be authentic.
And there's also another question that came in. If I'm deferred, should I tell the school about if I have a learning difference that I didn't disclose during the application process, or some other part of my identity or something like that that I didn't include in my initial application? Should I now update that?
You can. I mean, for me, you're the consumer. So what do you need to know about this institution and how it's going to support you moving forward? So I'm a big proponent of disclosing all of that information. You can't control how people react to these things, but they can't take it into consideration if you don't share it.
Right.
So
And it's who you are, right? And if they don't want you for who you are, then I don't know if that's the right.
that's not going to change. Yeah.
So I think we're gonna I think there are no more questions. If anybody has last minute questions, please share them. I guess I'll just say in closing that, and then if you want to add anything, that like you said, this is an opportunity. It doesn't seem like that maybe, but it's an opportunity maybe to switch directions or give you a kind of a second chance to think about what you want. And it is disappointing. It does mean that the waiting continues. It's been a long wait already for some, and the waiting continues. But find ways to celebrate kind of beyond the college admission experience, and look at the deferral as a positive in terms of the next the next cycle, and that you are admissible to that school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And be grateful that you're going through this process. Again, it doesn't feel like a gift, but it's really unique in our world to have the privilege of higher education, and, you're taking full advantage of it. So, keep that in mind.
There's one more question that did come in. Should you explain any low stats, like high GPA with a low SAT or something like that? If it sheds light on something that you didn't shed light on in your application, and you think it's important, then you should share it. If it seems like you're making excuses for something, then probably not the best way to go. But if it gives them new information, That's a good way to go. And then there's another, of course, as soon as I said we're ending, some schools have early decision 1. Should you apply early decision 2? So if I think the question is, if the school has 1 and 2, can you apply again as early decision 2? And that's a no. And if that's not the question, if the question is, should you apply early decision 2 to another school? Maybe if there's another school that you were kind of equally as excited about, and it might help your odds, maybe consider that. But you cannot apply ED2 to the same school. So Gina, thank you for spending your evening with us and sharing your wisdom. And we are going to be starting our college planning seminars after the holiday break for juniors, starting on Wednesday, January 11th. And we'll have a show every other Wednesday focusing on juniors and their families, and taking you all the way through the search and application experience, from essays to interviews, you name it. We're going to talk about it, finances. And there's a survey there in the chat if you want to enter to win a $50 Amazon gift card. And there tomorrow night, I mentioned earlier, we're going to have a Ask Us Anything straight talk with college admission leaders, and that's with the VP from NYU and the Vice Chancellor from UNC Asheville. So that is at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific. And so we hope you'll join us. Thanks again, Gina, and to all the experts that have shared their time and advice this year. We're really grateful. Happy holidays.
Thank you.